Alright guys, welcome to RC Mojo. This week it's back to the Hercules Hobbies trailer. We've got the chassis together, so this time we're going to start work on the box. To be precise, we'll be building up the fridge unit and the corner bits to make a complete end plate ready to fit. Right then, step 14. Making what they seem to call corner boxes. First of all, it's time for a new bag. This one covers 14 and 15. We've got lots of small screws in this one. Okay, we need 3 3x8 self-tappers, 24 M2 nylock nuts, and 24 2x6 self-tappers. This bit of the build is a two-stage operation, so for the first bit we're going to need 8 Y6s and 8 Y12s. These go together to make up 8 identical assemblies. On the back of the Y6s are some hex-shaped holes to fit the M2 nuts. They want to drop in with a nylon lump upwards. They're not a tight fit, so make sure they're sitting nice and flat on the bottom. To make it easier, you can slide the nut over a cocktail stick to make it line up. With the two nuts in, we can fit a Y12 over the top. It's got 2 posts on one side that help keep the nuts in position. The top only has 2 little raised bits for the screw holes. When it's in place, we can fit one of the small self-tappers in each hole. Because the plastic bit self-locates, we only need to do the screws up so the heads are snug. There's no need to really crank them down, you're only going to strip the plastic. And now, as all these bits are identical, we're just going to cut to having all 8 built up. Next we've got the third mounting points. They're built up much the same as the bigger bits. We need 4 D2s and 4 D3s. These are sided and helpfully marked with an A and a B. To keep the nuts in, there's also 8 Y1s. Just like the other bits, all we need to do is grab one of the D parts and drop in a nut with a nylon side upwards, making sure of course that it's laying flat on the bottom. Then to hold it in we fit a Y1 over the top and install one of the self-tapping screws. Now technically these aren't all the same, as there's a left and right handed part, but they're near enough that I think we can just cut to having the complete set. Doing the last bit of assembly is really simple. The small parts simply drop into the hollow in the big parts. There's even a nice notch in one corner, so you can't really get them wrong. Someone had a really good think about that. To hold it together, we just need to install one of the remaining self-tappers. Again, they don't need to be crazy tight, just nice and snug so it doesn't wobble around. So we just need to make up 4 of the left and 4 of the rights, and we've got ourselves a complete set of corner boxes. Very nice. Step 15. The fridge end of the box. There's quite a bit to do in this one. For a start, we'll need everything that's left in the screw pot. For the plastics, we've got H5, the main bit of the fridge, a nice sheet of plastic mesh, L4 and 6, one of the grills and its backplate, L5 and 7, which is the other pair, L1 and 3, which makes up the bits where the cable for the wired lights go, and the plug that blocks it off when you're not. We've got some cut and drilled aluminium angle. There's a few variations and they're not marked, so you have to be really careful to match them up with the diagrams. A Y5 and 2 Y8s. These end up locating the floor, roof and sides on the end panels. And from the previous step we'll need 2 of the A assemblies and 2 of the Bs. First bit of the build this time will be the grills. Before we cut out the mesh bits, we need to make sure it's all going to fit properly. L3 and L7 drop into H5. If they're a little bit tight, they will be okay, but if it's a real struggle to get them in, you might want to give them a little bit of a trim where they're sticking. The next bit though, the back panels, L4 and 5, fit so we don't have to be too worried about how we cut the mesh. As long as it fits between the mounting lugs, it's going to fit just fine. If you hold the mesh up against the back panels, you can get the cuts close enough that it's all just going to fall together. Lay the mesh over the grill and lay the back panel on the back. Make sure the mesh is in the right spot and install 4 2x8 self-tappers on each side. Like a lot of the self-tappers, they don't need to be super tight, just tight enough to pull the grill level with the white bit and hold the mesh in place. When it's all together, we do end up with a very nice looking unit. It'll need a bit of paint and detailing later, but the fit and finish is really rather good. Next we can mount the fridge unit to the front panel. It's another bit of pre-cut acrylic sheet that was covered in that awful paper stuff. I think I'll save you from the rather salty comments while I was trying to peel that stuff off. To hold it on, we're going to need 4 3x8 self-tappers and 4 3x9 washers. These are some of the bits that they've added later. The washers on the diagram were added after with stickers. With the fridge on the front panel, we can install the 4 screws and washers on the back. Loosely fit all 4, then do them up a bit at a time until they're just nice and snug. Next, we've got the little panel that goes over the big hole at the bottom. The Tamiya wired lights would come through with a rubber grommet that fits in there for the cable to come through. We will be using a wireless light set though, so it will be there just for some scaleness, as it's got some sort of controls or hose couplings along the bottom. To fit it in, we need 4 M3x10s and 4 M3 flange nuts. And as I'm sure you can guess, all we do is line the plate up on the panel and install the 4 screws and nuts in the corner holes. Now, there's a fair bit of movement available, so just do them up just tight enough to take up the slack. Line up the plate with the hole and make it level before nipping up all the screws. To block up the hole, we've got this nice little plug. It's a very loose fit and doesn't have any holes for fixings. So to fit it, we'll use some more of that slightly questionable double-sided tape. 2 little strips cut to fit should do the trick. Once it's all painted, we might use a bit of Evo Stick contact adhesive for something a bit more permanent. But I reckon the tape should do for now. Line it up behind the cable hole and give it a good firm press, and with any luck it won't fall off. Last bit now, and in the pot we've got the 2x8 self-tappers, some 2x10 machine screws, and a load of M2 nuts, which just happens to be what we need to fit the aluminium angle to the panel. As I said earlier, there's a few different aluminium bits in terms of where the holes are positioned, so before you try and fit them, make sure the holes match up with the diagram. Top first then, this one's got 4 holes along one face that all match up with the holes on the plastic panel. Behind the centre holes we need a Y5 which gets attached with 2 of the 2x8 self-tappers. For now, all the screws need to be very loose so we can centre everything up before we do the final bit of tightening. The bottom strip is the same as the top one, with 4 holes on one side of the aluminium. It might have been a little bit easier to fit this one before the black plate, as access is a little bit restricted, but not impossible. With a magnetic driver you can just about hold it all together while the thread starts. The sides are a little bit different. This time we've got Y8s to fit to the aluminium before we fit them to the side panel. We want to fit them so the standoffs separate the strip from the aluminium. This is to give the plastic side panel somewhere to slot in. Quite a neat design that I think should mean the end panels can come away from the main box with very little fuss. The Y8s get fitted with M2x10s and some M2 nuts. I think a little bit of thread lock would probably be a good idea here too, as they shouldn't ever need to come off. The corner boxes we made earlier can go on now. Just make sure you get the right ones. This bottom right corner one is an A. To fit them, we just use some more of the M2x10s. They thread into the M2 nylock nuts we fitted in the boxes. Very neat. The trick here is to work your way around installing the screws loosely, 2 per corner. When they're all loosely installed, hold the corner together very tightly and tighten up the screws so they're nicely nipped up. This is going to require both hands and probably a leg, so I'll do that off camera. When they're all nipped up, we've got a really sturdy assembly. There's very little flex. The gaps between some of the parts aren't too outrageous. I'm quite impressed. That's going to have to be it for this week though. It's the rear doors next, which look a little bit fiddly to assemble, to say the least. I think we'll get a few more steps in that video too for a longer video, to make up for this one being a bit on the short side. Anyway, as always, thanks for watching, like if you liked, subscribe if you want to know when the next part goes up, and of course comment if you've got something to say. Bye guys!